risk is the key to a great performance. That surprise factor is what makes this is the way I approach conducting. I want to be surprised because every time, this is the magic thing about music, is that it doesn't exist anywhere. It only exists the moment that it happens. And every moment that it happens is different.
If you've been to a symphony or even a musical, it is hard to miss the commanding figure of the orchestra conductor.
With his or her back to the audience, all we see is arms and baton and constant motion, occasionally stopping to point at one section or another or to reach for the ceiling.
And it's a bit like magic, watching the unknown, unspoken, and to the audience, mysterious communication happening between the conductor and the musicians that result in such an amazing complexity of sounds.
Well, our guest today, Ángel Gil-Ordóñez, is a Spanish-born American conductor who's led orchestras on multiple continents. These days, he's based in Washington, D.C., as the co-founder of the PostClassical Ensemble.
But before we begin our conversation with Ángel, to get a peek behind the curtain, we would like to thank our sponsors, Culligan.
Culligan's drinking water systems deliver the superior filtration and refreshing hydration you need to fuel your high-performance lifestyle. Culligan. It's water you love.
And we caught up with Ángel in his home in Washington, D.C. Ángel, it is a pleasure to have you a guest on the Adrenaline Zone, and I'm very much looking forward to this conversation.
I'm very, very happy to be with you, Sandra, and with Sandy here. Thank you very much for inviting me to this conversation.
So, Ángel, it's such a pleasure to meet you. I've always wanted to talk to a conductor, fascinated by the business. And so we're going to start by asking you, where did you grow up and where did you find your passion for music?
So I was born in Madrid. I'm originally from Madrid. And I studied there. At the time, being a musician was not precisely the most best regarded thing in society. So for my parents, I studied music from an early age. I was actually, I was the kid that sang very well and was asked to sing in every family holiday, which I hated, as you can imagine. And, Angelito has to sing, and I had to sing. But so I had actually a very good voice. I was part of a member of the choir in the school. I started, actually, my first instrument was the guitar and the accordion. And then when I was around 9, I started playing the violin. But as I said, in Spain at the time, being a musician was like, okay, you are studying music and what else? So I had to combine my passion for music with studies at the university. And actually, I became a civil engineer. But I never worked as a civil engineer. As soon as I had my diploma, I told my parents, okay, here's the diploma, and now I'm going to dedicate myself to music professional.
So I have a quick follow-up on that. You said you picked up the violin. I once picked up a violin and I looked at it and I said, how do I play this? There are no frets. And I guess a violinist just has to know from memory, from feel, from sound, where to move your fingers, right? Is that?
Absolutely. So I always say that every instrument, to play well an instrument is very difficult. Whatever instrument you you study, it's very difficult to master an instrument. But it's true that string instruments are especially difficult. So this is what I say, there are rewarding instruments and non-rewarding. And the string section goes in the non-rewarding instrument. So if you put your fingers in the right keys on the piano, after 1 month, you are able to play a melody. But in the strings, you have to build the instrument. So, and it takes, I can tell you from my own experience, my main instrument is the violin. You are producing cut sounds for 3 years until you are able to produce a real melody that somebody is able to listen to. So it's really, actually, a string instrument is also a very good training for a conductor. I'm very happy that I studied a string instrument because, as you know, the base of the orchestra is the string section, and to be able to know well string instruments has helped me immensely.
I have to ask though, why the accordion as a young boy? What drew you to the accordion?
Exactly. That's an excellent question, because that was the only instrument that was taught in the school. So either you play the accordion or that's it. So there was the accordion guitar or being part of the choir. So there was no other option. So I said, okay, all right, I play the accordion. And actually, it's a beautiful instrument, by the way. In Spain, actually, there was probably not anymore, but there was a very important tradition of accordion, especially in the north, in the Basque Country. And there is a tradition of playing the instrument. So it was, it was a weird choice, but I enjoyed very much too.
Okay, before we get into the music more thoroughly, you studied engineering and music. So do you see what kind of overlapping themes do you see between the music and engineering? Anything, just out of curiosity?
Absolutely. Well, I think the logical process of mathematics and an engineer is very similar to that of studying a school. Is that how a piece evolves has to do a lot with even with mathematical formulas. I mean, in the end, you are developing something, and how you build. My specialty was civil engineering, so it was. I mean, how to build something has to do a lot with the building, especially composing a symphony, for instance.
So, Angel, you moved around Europe a lot and studied under many different musicians. Tell us, what is the path to becoming a professional musician and then following from that to become a conductor? How does that work?
A musician can only call themselves a musician if you play an instrument. So as long as you sing or you play an instrument, you are a musician. And then there are many possibilities. You can play all kinds of instruments. You can be a singer. You can be a composer. And in my case, I felt that what made me a better musician than a violinist was actually being in front of a group and working with people. There is a very fascinating component about conducting, which is the working with human beings and conveying things to human beings and having a response from those human beings. And this to me is fascinating. It's actually what makes the conducting so exciting, in my opinion, is that you are sharing ideas and experiences with another human being. It's not just you by yourself playing the instrument, which is beautiful, it's very rewarding. But to me, it's much more rewarding make music with others.
So what's the difference though between playing an instrument with a group of people and producing music as a team in that direction and the feeling you get there versus conducting a group of musicians who are playing together to produce the music? Because it's also a team, but it's a different thing.
It is. And actually, in my opinion, the most difficult experience for a musician is to be a member of an orchestra. Because when you are playing as a soloist, you have much more possibilities of expressing yourself. When you are performing as a member of a chamber music group, imagine a string quartet or a trio, you have more possibilities of expressing your own personality. But in a big group, you have to balance your sound, your ideas with the rest of the group in order to create this beautiful balance that an orchestra is. So it's a very difficult effort. You have really to somehow sacrifice your own interest and your own ideas for the good of the group. And in my opinion, that is an extraordinary gift, and it's an extraordinary show of generosity leading an orchestra.
So I'm sure becoming a conductor does not work like, hey, I want to be a conductor, and the next day you find yourself standing in front of an orchestra. There's got to be a career path. Is it an academic path? The training required to be a conductor? Because I'm sure there are specific skills you have to acquire to be a world-class conductor.
Absolutely. So first of all, you have to play an instrument, at least, because if you play an instrument, you are a musician, which is, I mean, I always say when I ask me, well, what do you do? The first thing I say is not I am a conductor. The first thing I say is I'm a musician. And it happens that I, I express my musicianship through conducting. So, in my opinion, the best training for a conductor is composition, actually. I actually say that every conductor has to compose and every composer has to conduct because the two experiences are complementary. When you have a personal relationship with the score, you have gone through the process of writing music. When you approach the score, it's a familiar element. So I would say if a young musician approached me and asked me that this happening, with my students, of course, the more instruments you play, the better. I mean, just playing well an instrument is one life, but if you can dedicate, if you have to choose, I would actually, if you have to choose one instrument, I would advise the piano, because the piano helps you to learn the score much faster, And then there is another very important component in the piano, which is it teaches you to accompany other instruments, which is something crucial in conducting that we might talk later about the difference between conducting an orchestra and accompanying an instrumentalist. And that, being a pianist, you are used to accompany singers, accompany violinists. So for those like me that were terrible and keep being terrible at the piano, we had to jump on the effort of accompanying a soloist, real cold, right with the orchestra. So, I mean, you have to do it, and you do it talking about taking risks, but the piano really helps in that. So I would say piano and composition to me are the best training for a conductor.
Angel, I'm almost a little intimidated to ask this question, but how many instruments do you play?
Okay, so the violin is the one that I really played. I unfortunately had to stop playing because, I mean, if you don't play the instrument every day, instead of becoming a satisfaction, it becomes a frustration. So as soon as I started conducting professionally, I had to stop. I am a terrible pianist. I played the clarinet a little bit, and as I already told you, it was the awful kid that sung well. So I actually was a good singer. I studied also voice with a phenomenal voice teacher. I was a baritone. Learning voice has also helped me a lot in conducting because it helps you working with choruses. The work with a choir. So if you know also how the voice works, it was very helpful too.
I want to take a side trip down this composition path for a minute because we didn't talk about that earlier when you and I were chatting. So, is it hard to compose a score, and when you put that out there for the first time, is it a little bit scary to see how people are going to receive it, or how does that work?
I mean, I have to say that my training is composition. I haven't composed much. I hope that maybe at some point, you need a different state of mind for composition. When you are conducting, you are so focused on learning repertoire or learning of the music. Composition requires a different state of mind that right now I don't have that state of mind. I have done a lot of arrangements, which is I studied orchestration, how an orchestra works, which is arrangement for a large orchestra to a small orchestra, and that really helped me the training as a composition. But I mean, I can tell you, for a composer, when you listen for the first time the music you have written, is always a surprise. There is always something, which it has to be that way, And actually have premiere a lot of contemporary music, and it's so interesting to see the reaction of the composers when they listen for the first time the music. It's so interesting. Composers are actually the worst interpreters of their own music. They need us. They need us to guide us. And it's so interesting because in my experience, I've premiered many contemporary music. And I can tell you that they understand the structure, they understand the colors, they understand, but they're very lost in how fast the music has to go. So isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's
Mm.
This is- And I mean, they think they know, but they don't. And then I change the tempi and I tell them, why don't we try this? And they say, you are right, that's it. So it's but always there is an extraordinary. It's very beautiful to premiere music with a composer that is alive, that is next to you. They are so excited. They are so grateful. It's a very beautiful thing. Really.
But I would imagine as a composer that it's like writing a short story or a novel where you're never really done. You can always make it a little better. And when the composer hears it for the first time, it's like, oh, I need to change this one phrase or whatever. Be interesting.
It's very interesting what you say. It depends on the personality of the composer. There's people that are so convinced of what they do that they don't touch a single note unless there is a wrong note in the score or something like that. But others, it's true that they listen to the result and they say, oh, this melody is actually not for the oboe, this is for the flute, and they will change it. But it depends on the personality. So each composer is also a different mind in that sense.
Okay, so let's jump into the conducting for a moment. First of all, I have to ask: is it competitive to be a conductor? Is it sort of like a stair step up from musician, or how does that work?
I'm still trying to find out how this profession works. Well, exactly. So I think it's a little bit like everything in life. So the question is, when you acquire a knowledge that is very specific, of course there is a competition because there are not that many orchestras, and so I was lucky. I went to a competition I went to study in Germany, as Sandy said, and then I came back to Spain, and I was chosen as the associate conductor of the National Symphony, and that, of course, there was an excellent way to start. There was probably the most important at the time, the most important orchestra in Spain, and that opened me many doors. I imagine in your profession is a little the same. I mean, there are not that many opportunities, and you have to be at the right time in the right place, and things like that happen. So many extraordinary conductors, I'm sure that we don't know them, and they didn't have that opportunity. It's terrible to say that many very famous conductors are not that good, and they are very famous, which is the natural thing to do. I mean, not the best doctor is the most famous doctor. But anyway, that's another topic. But it's true that it's a combination of things. I mean, I'm totally convinced that if you really are passionate about what you do, you will find that door opening at some point. I want to be an optimist in that sense. That it might take longer than you think, but I mean, against something with passion, there is no way that you cannot going to find a way to spread yourself.
So I would imagine that if you set a score in front of a bunch of orchestra musicians and somebody said go, that they could play the piece, but it probably would not be very good. Can you tell us what the role of the conductor is? How does the conductor add value to the beautiful sounds you hear from a symphony?
Let me give you this phrase from my mentor, from my teacher, that I think explains everything very well. My teacher would say that sound is not music. Sound, under specific circumstances, can become music. And that's the difference. The difference is that if you have extraordinary players like I have in my post-classical ensemble, and you give them a piece that they don't know, and you just beat the pulse, they will play all the notes. Is that music?
Yeah.
No.
Probably not. Yeah.
So that's the difference. The difference is that what the conductor adds during the rehearsals to create that sound, that beautiful sound. I mean, just having 100 people playing the right notes together is an extraordinary experience already.
Yes.
But the difference, and this is to me, the big lesson with my teacher is that this is not music. This is extraordinarily well organized sound. Music is more than that. And what is music? Well, music is, in the end, is the development of attention. We start from zero, from silence. We create tension through sound. That tension develops, achieves a moment in which cannot reach more tension and goes back to silence. So what my mission is to teach my musicians that process. How do we create tension? We distend the tension because the tension is not linear. It doesn't go like this. You create tension, distend, tension, distend. It reaches the maximum point of tension, and the process back is the same. Distend, tension, distend, and back to zero.
So let me try something on you to see if this makes sense. I'll just use as an example. I can't remember.
Does that make sense? Well, first of all, a question.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But I want to test my knowledge here. So I think it's the second movement of Beethoven's Sixth Symphony that is a thunderstorm.
Yes.
Right. And you can play the notes, but the conductor turns it into a thunderstorm. Is that a fair appraisal with the right crescendos and pauses? And it's like, this has to sound like a thunderstorm. In an interpretation, is that a fair interpretation of what you're saying?
Yes. I mean, if the thunderstorm is not there, then you are not representing the. But look, I'm also not very into music as a way to create images.
Right. Okay.
To me,
fair enough.
The music is actually, my teacher would say that actually music is for us Westerners, is the only possibility to transcend reality. So music gives us the opportunity to stop thinking and just listen. So in the end, music can become a way of meditation, of transcending reality. So if you are listening to Beethoven and thinking, oh, this is the storm, and now this is the cloud, and this is the rain, then you are kind of wasting an opportunity to transcend that, to really listen, to be in the moment and experiencing every single moment of this process that I mentioned to you. So I know that might sound a little controversial, but it's not my approach to music. When I'm conducting an orchestra, I'm not trying to show a thunderstorm or the gallop of the Swiss artillery in Williamstown. I'm really trying the audience to experience something that brings them out of their brain.
So how do the styles vary between conductors and the way they go about making these effects? And what kind of an impact does that have on the effect that they're trying to get out of the music or the orchestra for the music?
Well, this is why, Sandra, if you go to a Beethoven Sixth Symphony and you listen to 5 different versions of the symphony with 5 different conductors, you're going to have a complete different experience of that. So it's that movement that Sandy mentioned, conducted by 5 different conductors, is going to sound completely different. And this is what you are looking for there. That would be the approach. There will be the conductor that is more interested in showing that part of the more visual parts with a little more effect in the orchestra, which is maybe a little more contrast from the fortes to the pianos, etc. And so you will see that listening to different versions of a piece.
Water is the ultimate health drink. With Culligan's filtration systems, you'll get the superior quality and pure tasting, ultra refreshing hydration you can count on to power your performance.
Culligan's smart reverse osmosis systems take it to the next level, helping you set hydration goals, track how much you're drinking, and even see what contaminants are reduced in your water.
That means you're always getting the exceptional water you need to feel truly good inside and out, ready to face the day and whatever challenges it brings. Culligan, water you love.
So let's talk about how you bring a piece of music to life. And I'm talking about rehearsal here. Day one, you sit down and, you're starting this process. First of all, how long does it take for you to get the orchestra where you want it to be in producing this music? And what is the process? What are the kinds of things you do as a conductor to shape it the way you want it to sound?
This is fascinating. It's actually the process of preparation of a concert, in my opinion, is the most fascinating part. I remember my teacher in one of the rehearsals with the Munich Philharmonic, in one of those moments in which the rehearsal, everything is so beautiful, everything is great. He stopped and said, "Isn't that fantastic? Isn't that a pity that we have to do a concert?" I loved it, So
Yeah.
the process was so beautiful, after saying, no, too fast, too soft, too forte. And then suddenly it happens. Then, oh God, we have to do a concert. I love it. So to me, the process is actually the fascinating part about conducting, which is, and so what is what I do? Okay, what I do is I think it's crucial to leave as much as possible an option for the musicians to express themselves. So you are in a collective. So the first thing I do is I read, imagine that we are playing a movement of a Brahms symphony, first movement. I read the first movement from the beginning to the end without stopping. I have my idea of the symphony. I have learned the symphony. This is the first process. Is the conductor has to know what the music is about. But I try to let the musicians express themselves. And it's so beautiful because they surprise you. Things that you think, this melody in the oboe has to go like this. And then suddenly the oboe takes a little more time there or operate it a little faster. And I think it's very beautiful to that you are able to be surprised by that. Not that this is the way it has to be. No. And this is something I learned from my teacher. If this is something about what makes music so exciting, is the surprise factor. You have to be surprised.
I was just thinking about that. If you leave room for the musicians to kind of do their own thing, that means there is some surprise. I wouldn't know if I would call it risk, even on the night of the concert, what they're going to show up with.
There is the risk. And actually, risk is the key to a great performance. That surprise factor is what makes this is the way I approach conducting. I want to be surprised. because every time, this is the magic thing about music, is that it doesn't exist anywhere. It only exists the moment that it happens. So, and every moment that it happens is different. So if you let that surprise factor, that risk factor happening, this is what makes the music exciting. This is what and also let you react with spontaneity to the sound. This is crucial. React with spontaneity, because my post-classical ensemble in a specific theater will sound differently than in another theater. Acoustics play a very important role too.
Just something you said. Does that mean you sort of real time on the stage change the way you're conducting based on the sort of spontaneity that the musicians are presenting to you?
Yes. And what about the audience? What about the audience? The audience it plays a crucial role in the performance because that energy is there. And Gustav Mahler would say something that I love, which is, if you are playing something slow and the audience is not reacting, play it slower. Isn't that phenomenal? So you might play it faster so that no, play it slower, and the audience would react. Then they would react. It's like when I always think of the image of the teacher that is yelling to the students in the class, nobody's listening, and then she starts speaking very, very softly, and then suddenly there is a silence. So it's a little bit the same image there.
So you have your back to the audience.
Yes,
and,
but I feel
you feel them.
Of course, we feel. I mean, the audience is there. The energy, when there is a moment of tension, the audience reacts with you. It's fascinating. It's really and if the audience is not reacting, it's because you are not doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think I know the answer to this question, but I want to pose it in an odd way, and that is, I'm guessing that when you decide we're going to produce this piece of music in this orchestra and we're going to play it for an audience, that the last thing you do is to go listen to how somebody else has produced it.
Yes,
right?
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that, because this is very dangerous, because there is an influence. I have to confess, and I have to say that when I'm accompanying a soloist, I do that because it helps me. Actually, I listen to many different versions of that piano concerto or violin concerto to see how different approaches. Because when I'm accompanying a soloist, I'm not in charge anymore. Well, I mean, I'm in charge, but not 100% in charge.
Yes, understand.
So, but I try, sometimes when you have, if they call you, well, you have to conduct this piece in 2 weeks, then, I go to a recording to a conductor that I somehow trust, and I say, in that it really helps me immensely to prepare things. But I try not to do it as much as I can. I try not to listen to recordings because of that influence that you are mentioning.
So, are there any composers whose works, either past or, you mentioned the contemporary composers because you enjoy getting their reaction, but are there other either past or present specific composers that you enjoy conducting a lot?
Yes. I mean, if you tell me, it's very difficult to say what is I especially interested, it really resonates with me a lot, the music of Haydn. And let me tell you why, because he understands music also the way I understand it. Sometimes I feel that, like, I'm a professional of the music, and my job is to conduct. And I'm a little bit against this romantic thing, no, because I'm inspired and all this. Haydn wrote 104 symphonies, not because he was inspired, but because he was paid for that. And if he wouldn't write a symphony, he wouldn't be paid. It's like Bach. Who in the hell in the name of God, wants to write 400 cantatas. I mean, there is no way, but because that was the way of his living, and he produced extraordinary music because this is something of the part of the music that I like very much, which is this le métier, as the French say, how do you say that? Being an artisan, creating something that has to happen. I mean, I need to have this ready for tomorrow, and I like that in Haydn. And he has an extraordinary sense of humor, which I think is crucial being a musician. If you don't have a sense of humor, you are in the wrong profession too.
I don't know that anybody would ever accuse Beethoven of having a sense of humor, at least with his symphonies. Maybe with his piano
How do you
concertos.
pick up humor in music like that?
When you know well how a symphony is written, then you compare and you see things in composers that say, he's making a joke here.
Huh.
Interesting.
Because he is contradicting what everybody else would have been doing there.
So nonconformity.
Nonconformity. In these contradictions, there is humor.
You've got to be a pretty educated audience to pick that up, though, don't you think?
Do me a favor, and from now on, try to listen to music with this idea of there is some sense of humor in this piece. And you would be surprised how Beethoven, you mentioned, how would be Beethoven has jokes too. And he uses things like, suddenly a popular song when in one of the most profound part of a symphony, then there is a melody that is sung by the peasants. So he's kind of saying, don't take me too seriously, So I think this is very important. And Haydn is, in my opinion, a master of working this kind of sense of humor.
I would think Mozart would be the same.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. These composers that produce symphonies like sausages, it's at some point they would say, "What the hell? Let's do this here."
Well, Angel, this is all about risks, and we've talked about it a little bit, but what would you describe as taking risks as a conductor that we haven't covered already?
There is always a risk in when you are conveying ideas to a group of people. You are taking a risk there. How those ideas are being accepted. But I think, to me, the most important part of the risk is what we mentioned before, which is to allow yourselves to be surprised, which is to give the possibility to the musicians to surprise you. And then, of course, your brain has to be wired for that. There is people that wouldn't accept that. This is how we do this, and that's it. There is no way. There are conductors that don't accept any suggestion from the musicians. This is the way I want the symphony. I believe the symphony has to be that way. I'm of the opinion that precisely because music is something that happens every time that is produced, to leave the opportunity for surprise is beautiful. It's what makes the process really extraordinary. And there is a risk on that, but if you are well trained, I mean, as I tell my students, don't worry, it's just the first 25 years. And that's it.
Well, speaking of 25 years or even more in your case, you must have grown in the profession. In other words, from the earliest days of being a young conductor to today, you must have changed over time. How has your approach matured over all these years?
I mean, of course, it's knowledge. I think you gain authority through knowledge. To me, that's a crucial thing. When you are in front of an orchestra with knowledge, then you receive authority immediately. I think I learned that the more honest you are, the better everything is. So if you are conducting and make a mistake, you say, I'm sorry, my fault. And nothing happened. The terrible thing, many conductors that are not that secure just blame the others for their mistakes. And that's a terrible thing. So I think I've learned, of course, being more aware of how to behave, even bodily in front of an orchestra, what works. I did, at the beginning, I wanted to show too many things. And you learn to reduce your expression. And you learn that little by little that the less, the better. And this is something that you learn with age too. And then, of course, you learn a lot of psychology. When I was a young conductor, I would see the trumpet player would look at me like this, like, oh, he hates me, I would say. He doesn't hate me. He just maybe has a problem, a moral problem, or he had a fight with his wife that the morning. He doesn't hate me at all. On the contrary, he's just, like that, or, So I learned not to personalize those human behaviors. So in the end, you feel not to pretend and being more honest. I think this is, to me, the key, is that instead of pretending more or trying to convey things, just be yourself and convey with honesty what you want to share with the musicians. And it really works.
Yes. And with humility.
So I have to ask, what is the scariest, most nerve-wracking performance you ever had, and why?
Well, when you are premiering contemporary music, this is there is music. Not all only contemporary music, but there is music in the 20th century that are very difficult to conduct technically, because there are too many things going on. Where I'm really having more heart attacks is when I'm accompanying a soloist, and this is back to what we said before, which is I don't have the whole control, because now I am accompanying a soloist, and the soloist might surprise me even more than I hope, and it's beautiful, to have surprises, but what kind of surprises? I'm going to tell you an anecdote, and you're going to understand immediately. It was one of the scariest moments in my career. I was with the National Symphony in Madrid, and I was asked to accompany a soloist in 3 piano concerti by Mozart in the same program. An absurd thing that I don't advise to do to anybody. Ridiculous. Who wants to hear in the same performance 3 piano concerti by Mozart? Anyway, that was the idea of the soloist. And you know what happened? In one of the concerts, he went the melody to the other concert. Can you imagine? So you're accompanying something, and then, it's very, in Mozart, when you are playing 3 piano concerti, then suddenly it's the same tonality, and he went from one concerto to the other. So I was like, what the hell? What do we do? So what do you do in these cases? Don't do anything. You keep going. The musicians were looking at me like,
what is he doing? What are you doing?
What's he doing? I kept going. It was like 10 seconds or 15 seconds of, I don't know what is happening here. And then suddenly, finally, the soloist, of course, he immediately
snaps out of it.
And then, and he came back to the right place. So it was like, my goodness. Then, of course, the our beautiful singers are also able to give you very nice heart attacks because they get so excited sometimes, then they start singing whatever. And I have had some cases there too. So actually, both conducting, contemporary music and some opera with singers is because in the end, when you lose control of what is happening is when you really enter in a moment of very, very terrible risk that you cannot predict what will happen. But anyway, on the other hand, working with a soloist is beautiful. I mean, if you have the right soloist that actually knows what he's doing, is very gratifying because it's very rewarding to, it's a collaboration between things, but it can be also traumatic.
Just a couple of quick questions as we're getting closer to the end here. You founded the PostClassical Ensemble, and tell us about that, and tell us where you're trying to take that group.
So I always wonder why people that love visual arts, that go to the National Gallery of Art or the Phillips Collection, people that go to film festivals, people that love theater and are able to attend a Shakespeare performance that is 3 or 4 hours, don't go to concerts. Why is that? I always wonder about that. I mean, this is people that love jazz or other popular music. And what I came about is the idea that what is not working is the format in which classical music is being presented. So this old format of you go to one of the regular orchestras and there's some Mozart overture. Then from there you go to a violin concerto by Brahms. There is an intermission and then a Tchaikovsky symphony. So those who have been educated in that, they have no problem with that. But for those who like to listen to music at home, don't feel attracted to go to such an experience. So I thought we need to transform that experience. And how do we do that? Well, let's bring those elements that attract these people to the concert hall. To give you an example, why don't we tell stories instead of being so static in the concert performance? To give you an example, last season we did a program that we call Paris at Midnight, in which we feature one of the most extraordinary piano concerti ever written in the 20th century, the piano concerto in G major by Maurice Ravel. So how do we tell the story of that concerto? What was in Ravel's mind in order for him to create that concerto? So then just look what was happening in Paris in the 1920s. So we had on the one hand, the crazy surrealist and the Dadaist doing their thing. And then what was happening in Paris that was very important? The American jazz was taking Paris by storm. Josephine Baker, Sidney Bechet. So this is how we contextualize that piece. We started with an accordionist actually playing traditional Parisian music to create the atmosphere, welcome to Paris. Then from there, we show a surrealist film by René Clair, completely crazy, with music by Eric Satie that the orchestra played live. Then we show the clip of Josephine Baker singing and dancing. We had a small jazz group created on a stage that would play music by Sidney Bechet, and we ended the performance with Ravel piano concerto. So this is the way we think that we can attract a different audience. And for those who love music already and love the Ravel piano concerto, will discover a complete different piece if you bring those elements there. So we are working for the converted and for the non-converted. And so this is the way that PostClassical Ensemble presents its performances.
So the key is to find new ways to delight the audience. This is exactly what you're doing.
Exactly. I think, to tell a story, there are beautiful stories in music and in the humanities. In the end, music is there always in every story somehow. And if you are able to tell those stories and bring those elements that attract a more varied audience, you have an audience. And the reality is that, I mean, I have to say, we are sold out every time. So there is an audience in Washington eager for this kind of experiences, especially in the city with, as you know, one of the highest education level in the country. You know, people are really interested and curious. So in the end, it's to foment curiosity too.
Well, Angel, we're going to have to close up here for the time, but this has been so delightful, and I've really enjoyed listening to your stories and getting a peek behind the curtain, as it were, to how conducting works and how musicians approach music and some of the challenges. So thank you so much for being our guest on the Adrenaline Zone. It's been wonderful.
I know I'm having fun with a guest when the time goes by way too fast.
Exactly.
Well, Sandra and Sandy, thank you very much, and it's been a real pleasure. It's it's a fascinating profession, and I'm very happy and very privileged to be able to dedicate my life to this.
So if you're ever in Washington, D.C., go see the PostClassical Ensemble.
Absolutely.
And you'll get to see our guest in person.
Excellent.
So, well done.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That was Ángel Gil-Ordóñez, co-founder of the PostClassical Ensemble in Washington, D.C., and guest conductor on many continents. I'm Sandy Winnefeld.
And I'm Sandra Magnus. Thanks again to Culligan for sponsoring this episode. A high-performance lifestyle deserves high-performance water. Learn more at culligan.com.
And please pass our podcast around to your friends. And we'll see you next week with another fun episode of The Adrenaline Zone.